Hello, Chipmunk and Chipette fans, and welcome back to another podcast-style installment of Alvin and The Chipmunks Elaborations. My name is Grandy Tamias, and today's topic will be, what does a future reboot of Alvin and The Chipmunks need in order to be successful? Last year, I made an elaboration about when a reboot of the films is likely to happen, and in hindsight, a lot of what I said could also be applied to the cartoons as well. So in this elaboration, I'll be discussing future iterations of Alvin and the Chipmunks in general, and not particularly confining this topic to one medium. Then again, I'm not sure how relevant that would be anyway, since for the most part this franchise only has one version of itself going on at a time. Like, the CGI series had been out for a few months by the time Road Trip came out, but that's a relatively short overlap. Since Road Trip came out and pretty much concluded everything in the movie series, it's just been one long, unbroken stretch of the 2015 series. That could in part be due to the fact that the Bagdasarian family are busy enough as it is with one series, and wouldn't have the time to oversee anything with the production of another project. That would likely change if this franchise were sold to a bigger entity, which we still have no update on after over a year. Seriously, this is like the media conglomerate version of The Boy Who Cried Wolf. I digress, but on that note, if you saw my videos on that subject, my opinion did shift after a while, and I detailed that an acquisition would be a good opportunity for a reboot. But what should such a reboot have? Well, let's start with its longevity. We've had the Fox films last for 8 years, the 80s series also lasted 8 years, not counting the TV specials or Universal films, and the 2015 series, by the time that's done, will have gone on for at least 10 years. So I'd say between 7 and 10 years is a good lifespan for a reboot of a cartoon franchise like this, maybe longer depending on how they roadmap it. But there's also the matter of the target audience, which, like the main characters, are children. Again, longevity doesn't seem to be affected by this, since a good portion of the kids who are watching the 2015 series now probably haven't been following since the beginning. Heck, some of them may not have even been born when it first came out. Inversely, I doubt that many of the 5 to 10-year-olds who started watching the series back in 2015 have continued watching into Season 5, as many of them are teenagers now. That seems a little paradoxical, since the Chipmunks and Chipettes are teenagers in the 2015 series, but even if they weren't, they're still presented in such a lighthearted way that most 5 to 10-year-olds can easily latch onto, regardless of the show's sense of continuity or a timeline where they age in real time, or like I just said, their ages in general. I suppose they could do something like the aging in real time thing, where this new reboot starts out as a little kid's show and the characters grow up into teenagers along with their audience and take on a slightly more mature tone. Not too mature, mind you, like something similar to the CGI series, but like it can still be for kids, but they cut down on the simplistic humor or make the plots a little more complex. That would probably be too big of a risk, though, and may alienate any new kids who want to get into Alvin and the Chipmunks later. Though I guess this is kind of mitigated by the general ease of accessing media these days. I mean, I'm not sure how many of the relatively new kid fans of the current series are watching episodes from Season 1, but I'm pretty sure it is possible. Besides, in the medium of animation, it's easier to get away with a floating timeline that doesn't match up to real time, much like the 2015 series. And even if they did try aging along with one generation, there is no guarantee that most of those kids will want to stick around for that long. Following on from that point, next I want to discuss the general tone and plotting of the series. Now, I obviously don't want this franchise to be turned into something that it's not. I get that they gotta appeal to children. But we live in an age where animation can still tell a complex story that adults can appreciate while also being lighthearted enough for kids. So in terms of tone, I think we could certainly use a step up from what the 2015 series already does. Some of the better episodes of that show have dealt with some pretty valuable and sometimes powerful messages, like the benefits of protecting wildlife like in Sucktoad, or putting faith in others' leadership from Mutiny, or taking on difficult assignments on your own like in Parent Trap. Episodes like that are few and far between nowadays, and I honestly feel like they should be the norm. Sure, it can be good to have episodes that are just humor or spectacle from time to time, but most of those just end up falling flat for me. Honestly, those kinds of episodes may need their own elaboration to properly dissect the matter. But as far as the kind of maturity level that they should be aiming for, I would like to see them address some serious topics, and as someone who suffered from anxiety problems as a kid, not only do I think that Alvin and the Chipmunks should be able to give some level of relatability to kids like that, but the personalities and dynamics of some of the characters could lend itself nicely to those kinds of stories. I'd also like to see some more emphasis on environmental issues similar to what I mentioned with Sucktoad. The current series already does a good job with those in my opinion, but I still think it can be pushed further. Whatever the case may be for that, I hope that the Chipmunks, the Chipettes, and Dave can act true to how they are characterized in prior incarnations and set a good example for the kids who look up to them. As far as plotting goes, I do think Alvin and the Chipmunks has the potential to tell a consistent narrative over multiple episodes or movies, instead of relying on a formula for standalone stories like a large portion of the 2015 series. For a TV series, that may require more half-hour episodes as opposed to A and B segment ones like most of the franchise has been. But again, it's not unheard of. There was a time during the later seasons of the 80s show where those were a lot more frequent. And I think that would be more ideal in this day and age, since certain cartoon tropes have gotten repetitive, and I wouldn't want an Alvin and the Chipmunks reboot to just be another opportunity to do those again. Like, you know how every cartoon has a body swap episode or a shrinking episode, both of which the 2015 series have had? Yeah, those are less common with consistently narrative-driven shows. I know that goes against tradition with this franchise, but like I said, there is potential. You can have stories that are continuity-based and build to a larger goal, but can still be understandable to kids. Heck, it's even possible to have smaller standalone episodes in between the larger storyline of the show, and could even have a payoff later for those who do watch them, which chances are most fans will end up doing anyway. As for what kind of interconnecting plot could fit well for a franchise like Alvin and the Chipmunks, it would likely have to relate to music in some way. In my retrospective of the 2007 film, I pitched an idea for an alternate version that would have stuck more to one goal of them trying to make the Chipmunk song popular, instead of their fame and success just happening instantly halfway through the film. So something like that with their music careers in general, and it would definitely fit with Alvin's character, always escalating things and wanting to be famous. So that's a goal that could be built towards over multiple episodes or seasons of a TV series. Now, I've mostly been talking about a reboot for TV, but if it were a new series of films, that comes with its own advantages, but also some disadvantages too. For one thing, sequels take years to make, but even if that process were more efficient, audiences might not be interested if we get a bunch of films over a relatively short period of time. Like, I don't think we need a cinematic universe for Alvin and the Chipmunks. And if they decide to use new films to adapt storylines from the older Alvin and the Chipmunks media, they may have to choose carefully since they may not be able to do all of them during a reboot's longevity. But maybe they could do a hybrid thing where the reboot is primarily movies, but they have a TV show to supplement events between sequels. Or maybe it's primarily a TV show and the movies are reserved for bigger story events. Personally, I'd prefer the latter approach, and it'd be kind of like the 80s era, but if the Chipmunk Adventure had sequels. Speaking of which, I should write that down for a future video idea. However, if they go with an ongoing storyline like I was talking about a minute ago, viewers of the movies might be lost without watching the TV show, or vice versa. So again, this kind of goes back to something I said in my elaboration about the 2015 series getting a movie, where they might instead just make the quote-unquote movie a longer episode of the TV series and not even be theatrical. To conclude, the Alvin and the Chipmunks franchise may have to adapt in terms of its medium, whether it be TV or film, and how it can appeal to a wide audience if it wants to stay relevant in pop culture over the next however many years. And this elaboration was more or less my overly detailed and comprehensive way of saying how I would reboot this franchise if I were in charge, but I'd love to know in the comments how you would do so. Side note, I did write a portion of this video about whether Bagdasarian Productions could, or even should, be involved in the next reboot, but I want to save that for its own video instead. I think that question needs to be handled with its own kind of care, whereas this elaboration was more about a Chipmunk reboot on a conceptual level. Anyway, comment below, what do you guys think the next reboot of Alvin and the Chipmunks needs in order to be successful? Also, you're more than welcome to leave a like and subscribe if you want more content like this, and if you want to follow me on Twitter and or join my Discord server, the links to those are in the description of this video. With all that said, I hope you enjoyed, have a nice day, and thank you for your time.